Wanted to make that clear, and that this is a large part, though, Piers, going back to your point of why, because my sisters were on the left, and this is the first election that they voted for Trump. They're from Connecticut, dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, I guess you could say, and they moved away. And the trans issue was the #1 reason that they did.
Yeah.
What they said was happening in the school system made them fearful. They have sons. They thought it was completely crazy and bizarre that they're insisting upon trying to make toddlers. My sisters have toddlers believe that they can be anything that they want and that they're non-binary. They truly believe the left has gone crazy.
Candace Owens absolutely eviscerated Mark Lamont Hill on the Piers Morgan Uncensored show. Mark and Candace went back and forth on the issues, and Mark Lamont Hill, quite frankly, just didn't know what he was talking about, contradicting himself left and right. This dude didn't know what he wanted, but Candace Owens exposed him for the moron that he is. Let's all watch together and see how this goes down.
What about, okay, but Mark, what about, okay, but what about the point?
A different issue.
Let's move to the trans point.
To the trans point.
Yes.
I'm going to the trans point. To the trans point, I don't think it's a contradiction for Democrats to do that unless they accept the terms of your argument. Let me be clear. If you think that trans women are not women, then yes, it would be a violation of women's rights to say that trans women should be boxing. I happen to believe.
No. I'm sorry. Mark.
I need to finish. No. I insist on finishing this point because I will not be cut off and misrepresented. Let me make the point.
Okay.
I happen to believe that biological males should not participate in women's sports. I am fine taking that position. Yeah, that's my point. Sometimes if you hear me out, you'll realize we're not even debating. But there are many Democrats who don't take that position. There are many people on the left who believe that, and let me be clear, I think trans women are women. I just think sports are divided in a very particular way. In 8th grade, we make a decision that we need to divide sports up by gender or by sex, right? Because we believe that there's something fundamentally different about biological boys and biological girls that say we shouldn't be running on the same track team. We shouldn't be boxing each other. I'm okay with that argument. I agree with that argument. I don't want to speak for Candace, but I suspect she agrees with me on this, and I suspect you agree with me on that. So we're not in disagreement on that. But just because I have that position doesn't mean that everyone who disagrees with me is being a hypocrite, because they don't begin from the same premise that I begin from. That's all I'm saying. So I don't think it's contradictory.
Hang on. All right, hang on. What other premise could there possibly be? The bottom line is these are people who were born biological males who are competing against biological females. And there's a reason why we don't do that in sport. It's why the Olympics have always separated the sexes, because the truth is, if they didn't, women wouldn't win any medals.
Look, I mean, listen, I know that
I think what you should do is bring someone in who has the position that you're trying to debate. It's like you're trying to force a debate with me on something that we agree on. So bring on somebody who has the opposite position, and they can speak for that. But what I'm saying is that
I just wanted to add here, like, just to say where we do actually differentiate, like, trans women are absolutely not women. And that's why we're playing the crazy game right now, is because we have people that are trying to parse reality and say, well, I believe trans women are women, but they're also biological men. Like, the fact that we are calling them trans women, it is because they are not women. I am a woman, and no matter how you feel on the inside, you are never going to be a woman. And that disagreement, that fundamental disagreement, is the reason why we are playing the crazy game. I won't play it. I will not address a man that is in a dress as a woman. It's insulting to me. It's insulting to the things that actual women lived through in their lives. And, you can play Halloween. You can put lipstick on a pig. It is still a pig, and it is just Halloween. So I just feel very strongly about that, and I wanted to make that clear. And that this is a large part, though, Piers, going back to your point of why, because my sisters were on the left, and this is the first election that they voted for Trump. They're from Connecticut. Dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, I guess you could say, and they moved away. And the trans issue was the #1 reason that they did.
Yeah.
What they said was happening in the school system made them fearful. They have sons. They thought it was completely crazy and bizarre that they're insisting upon trying to make toddlers. My sisters have toddlers believe that they can be anything that they want and that they're non-binary. They truly believe the left has gone crazy. And they say, I didn't leave the left left me. And that is an accurate statement to make, because they cannot just see things that are just so plainly obvious. They are trying to criminalize the idea that a woman is a woman, and you can't just become a woman because you feel a certain way on the inside. And the right, like I'm doing right now, I will just say it as it is, right? You are not a woman. I am sorry that you are suffering from a mental disorder. If you were suffering from any other mental disorder, I would treat you the same way. I want you to get better. But because you are suffering from a mental disorder does not mean that I have to pretend that I have a mental disorder and that I see things differently. I don't.
Absolutely well said from Candace Owens. If someone with, say, schizophrenia came up to you and said, yeah, the television, it's been talking to me. I'm getting secret messages through my television set, and the television is telling me I need to go do this or that. You wouldn't sit there and be like, oh, yeah, that you know what? That is true. Sometimes the TV does talk to people, and that's something we need to normalize. If they say the television's talking to them, then yes, we have to believe them that the television is talking to them. No one in their right mind, no sane person would argue that. If you knew someone like that who was suffering from that mental illness, you would say, I think you need help. So why is it then that in this case, with gender dysphoria, I believe that I always get it mixed up if it's gender dysmorphia or gender dysphoria. I believe it's gender dysphoria. So why is it that with gender dysphoria, we need to indulge our delusions? It makes absolutely no sense. And also, Mark Lamont Hill does contradict himself. He's saying he's not contradict himself, but Mark is absolutely contradicting himself, because he'll sit there and be like, I don't think biological men should play in women's sports. But then he'll also say trans women are women. Well, which is it? Because if trans women are women, if that's what he believes, then what he's essentially saying is that there are some women who shouldn't be allowed to play sports. Which, even if that were the case, if you were to say, yes, women with high testosterone shouldn't be allowed to play sports, well, that still aligns with us saying that trans women should not be in sports, because trans women are going to naturally have higher testosterone. So despite what Mark Lamont Hill says, he is still contradicting himself. What do you guys think? Sound off in the comments below. Let's continue.
Mark, I'll let you respond directly to what Candace says there. Well, let me just point out one thing. Let me just point out one thing. There was a New York Times report today that said that one of the most effective Trump ads during the presidential race towards the end was the one where he had Kamala Harris saying, she'll call you they, them, I'll call you, you, or whatever it was. And that turned out to be, to the Trump campaign team's surprise, one of their most effective ads of the whole race, apparently, which suggests it is a much bigger issue than some Democrats clearly want people to think. I saw Joe Scarborough on this yesterday, very vocal, saying this trans issue has gone completely wrong. The Democrats should not be supporting this kind of thinking. And Bill Clinton, apparently, according to the New York Times, he directly tried to get the Democrats and Kamala Harris and her team to understand that they had to come out against this. But they didn't. And that is, I think, a big problem, particularly, as I say, the reason I think it's a big problem is if at the same time you're trying to say, I'm the person protecting women's rights. One of the reasons why so many women didn't vote for her may be because they just didn't buy it. Sorry, if you did, you wouldn't allow this.
Right. I'll respond to all those points. I think they're interesting points. I think, one, I'm not sure anyone, and again, I need to see the data to speak to this, just as we all should. I don't think anyone is voting for the president based on this issue. It could be an issue that tips the scale, but I think most people aren't voting for president based on this issue. I just don't think it's the priority issue of most people.
Mothers are.
I do. Again, they may be. I'd like to see the evidence of that. I can't say definitively one way or the other, but it's never happened before in any election, so this would be the first time. So if it's true, just show me the evidence, and I'm happy to learn from it. But to the bigger point here, I think that we can say, when I say woman, I'm including cisgendered women, I'm including transgender women. When I say women, I'm including all of their experiences. When I want to protect women, I don't just want to protect cisgender women, I want to protect transgender women. When it comes to sports, for me, it's about a competitive advantage. If someone were a cisgender woman, which we've seen before, that had high levels of testosterone, but were not trans, just had high levels of testosterone that gave a competitive advantage, I would say they also should not compete. It's not their transness. It's about keeping a level playing field. And I believe, as a general rule, and there might be some exceptions, but as a general rule, a person who is a trans woman in particular, and we see this actually on the converse, when trans male boxers attempt to compete with cis male boxers, the trans women lose. They lose badly. And honestly, I worry about their safety and their health. So it's not a safe playing field. But that doesn't mean that to acknowledge the womanness and the humanity and the fundamental dignity and legitimacy of trans identities is to play make-believe or to play fairy tales. I think we can acknowledge their humanity. And most Democrats, most Democrats, I think, who I speak to, and again, I'm not a Democrat, but I'm on the left. Most Democrats, I think, share the position I have. I don't think most people, at least in my neighborhood, my community, I'll talk about Black people in particular, think that trans folks should be playing in sports, right? In ways that create competitive disadvantage.
Well, let's agree on that central point.
They recognize and
just to be
trans.
Okay, hang on. Well, we've got about 3 minutes left. Candace,
I feel so strongly about this. Yeah, I just feel strongly
listen,
about
I think you've made your point strongly. I just want to ask you, with just a few minutes left, what do you want Trump to do? He's got an incredible mandate here. What would you like to see him do, Candace, to really transform America in a positive way?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that he promised he would do. Secure the borders. I want him to get the illegals out of this country. It fundamentally is hurting the workers, particularly the blue-collar workers, is hurting Black Americans. It's why you saw men moving away from this. And obviously, Latinos are upset about it as well, to try to conflate being a legal Latino citizen with being an illegal, I think is something that has been upsetting to people. I very much want him to go after the deep state. I know I saw, Piers, that you tweeted, and many people have this sentiment, like, we should take the high road now. We should walk away from this. We shouldn't go after Hunter Biden. I think it's the exact opposite. He took the high road in his first time that he was in office, and look what they did to him afterwards. We need to root out this corruption and truly go after the Department of Justice, because if they will do this to a sitting president, how safe does an American feel? I want him to instantly, on first day in the office, to take care of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. To issue them both pardons. And I want to make sure the people that are around him do a very good job at deregulating this economic environment. I look forward to seeing what RFK Jr. does to the CDC. He has been on to them for a very long time. Absolutely collapse Big Pharma, what they did throughout COVID, the bureaucratic state that was a warning to what will come if we allow the state to continue to grow. And he's got to fundamentally shrink government, secure the borders, and root out the corruption of the Department of Justice and the deep state.
And Mark, we've got about a minute. What would you want him to do?
A bunch of stuff that he's not going to do. I'd love to see him hike the minimum wage to a living wage. I'd love to see him cut off funding to Israel. I'd love him to restore full funding to the Palestinian people through UNRWA, and in fact, increase that funding. I'd love to see him sign a reparations agenda. I'd love to see universal health care for all. I'd love to see student debt forgiveness. I'd love to see him, jump back into all the international climate agreements that he's pulled out from in the past and commit to staying in them. And I'd love to see him have a humane border policy. We may disagree on what humane looks like, but we absolutely need one. So I'd love to see him do all that stuff. And if he does all that stuff, I will fight for a constitutional change to give him a third term.
What a moron this Mark Lamont Hill is. So in order for him to support Donald Trump, it's pretty much just gimme, handouts. If you just give me all this stuff like the Democrats promised to do, Donald Trump will be great. That's not how this works, Mark. This is not how it works. What's the point of raising the minimum wage? No one pays $7 an hour anymore. If anyone's getting paid that much, it's most likely illegal immigrants. But no one is getting paid the federal minimum wage. Because of the competitive market, everyone else pays so much more. You would have to be an illegal immigrant who doesn't have any workers' rights to be getting paid the federal minimum wage. Student loan forgiveness, again, costs the taxpayers a bunch of freaking money for us to pay for other people's loans, reparations. He's just asking for more and more handouts. But that's the mentality of these people on the left, of these Democrats. They're just entitled, which is why Kamala Harris and the Democrats lost the election. I have the simple reason to why Donald Trump won. Because he wasn't entitled to our votes. He worked his butt off. He was everywhere. And this was after his assassination attempts. I don't think anyone would blame Donald Trump if he made less appearances after his assassination attempts. But he didn't. He made even more appearances. I felt like the dude was everywhere before his elections. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris was here and there, did some appearances. None of them were good. didn't offer any good policies. No one knew what she represented. But she felt like she was entitled to your votes. And all her voters were all entitled as well. That is why they all had temper tantrums after the election was over. I have videos up on the screen right now that you could check out for yourself and see these breakdowns in action.